I was just chunking it, and I like pulled a muscle in my back. It was brutal, but then I got a lot better. So I just needed to get the rust out, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're live.
Then I got a lot better. So I just needed to get the rust out, you know.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear that.
Yeah, you won't hear it now.
Oh, man. Whoa. Oh, hi, everybody. How's it going? Good to see you. You're here on the Living Force night, and so am I. Funny that. We're going to talk some Thrawn tonight. We're going to do a little bit of book talk, a little teaser next to me about what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about some weird Twitter stuff that went on. We'll discuss our crossover event from last night. Emma's back, Corey's gone, and Wes is about to punch it. Man, my video and Zoom lagged.
Yeah.
Hello. Welcome, everyone, to the Living Force, a Youtini Network podcast. I am one of your hosts tonight, Eric Eilerson, and joining me for our part 2 of our Thrawn Ascendancy Greater Good Roundtable are 3 of the greatest folks in the world. We have Dr. Charles Hankel joining us. Hey, buddy.
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
It's going well. You got that nice red light behind you. It's very, very
I
thematic.
do, yeah. I'm trying to match that book that's right up there that we might talk about for a couple minutes.
I dig it. I really like it. I also like how glorious the light shining off of the face of Wes Jenkins is tonight. Look at that.
Yes.
Look at that.
In my freshly sunburned face.
Yeah.
It was a crispy 97 degrees when I got off the softball field yesterday at 1 o'clock. And then when I got in my truck leaving work today, it was 101. So go Texas.
Wes, your face also matches the cover of the book that we're going to talk about tonight.
That's
As
right.
it does.
If any of y'all missed our bounty hunt on Sunday, we coined the phrase the meekend, which is Wes's me weekend that he had. So I'm glad you had a good time on your meekend. Someone else had a great time on their meekend with their first round of golf of the year, at least, is the awesome, fantastic Emma Park. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I did go golfing for the first time this weekend. It wasn't as hot as Texas, but it was pretty hot for Maine. It was like 80. I'm just glad I don't live in Texas.
Oh, man. Speaking of, ERCOT, our energy grid people, told us that we have to cut back on our energy for this week because everybody's using it because it's so damn hot. So
hey, what's the worst that could happen if a lot of Texas energy goes wrong, right?
Not only when it gets cold, but when it gets hot, the damn Texas grid will explode. So that's fun.
Well, luckily, if it blows west, you got I know you don't have the rising storm yet. I was gonna say that'd be perfect timing. But anyway, hi everyone. Hi to these folks that are dealing with various levels of heat. Hi to everyone in the chat. We're happy to see you tonight. As I said at the top of the show, this is our part 2 of Thrawn Ascendancy Greater Good, the Roundtable experience. If you missed last week's episode, go ahead, pause this now, go back, listen to our character deep dives we did. Today, we're going to finish up talking about some villains and, of course, the overarching question and Charles's Easter eggs, always a fan favorite. But before we do that, just a little bit of news we want to talk about. First of all, I want to give a huge shout out to the rest of our Youtini team, our Youtini, if you will, and especially Emma, on the Shadows of the Empire crossover event from last week. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Man, we had so much fun with that. It was a lot of talk about Shadows of the Empire, like for sure. I think I'd be fine not talking about it for a while, but at the same time, it was fun. It was a fun crossover with just so many moving pieces here. We've got YouTube videos, guides, Star Wars archives, the Cosmic Force, Legends Look Back. It was just Youtini game nights. It was insane. And I'm so happy we did it. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah. And if you missed any of that, folks, it's all on the YouTube channel right now. Actually, the Legends Look Back episode about the novel, the Cosmic Force episode about the comic, the game night episode where Andrew and Jared played Shadows of the Empire, and of course the Star Wars Archives episode with Jose and Trevor that got released as a video, like the first time ever on Sunday, where they went into all the deep Trevor level deep Easter eggs. So if you didn't get enough Shadows of the Empire last week, throw on the soundtrack that's on Spotify and dive back into that. Congrats, everyone. Maybe we'll do another big crossover. That was super fun. It took a lot of planning, so it's not going to be a lot, but I'm glad we did it. Another thing I want to talk about, speaking of legends, is I want to give a thank you to our friends over at Del Rey because I got a package today I didn't expect. Yeah. I got these bad boys. This week, the Legends Essentials release. Look at these new paperbacks.
Dang.
Yeah, those are so cool.
Yeah, we talked about these a while back, but they're finally coming out tomorrow, I believe, wherever books are sold. We got Shatterpoint by Matthew Stover. We got Heir to the Empire by Mr. Zahn himself. And of course, we got Darth Bane, Path of Destruction, finally has a good cover. It only took us like 20 years.
That looks like it could be like the cover to an Edgar Allan Poe poetry collection, man. That is some dark stuff.
Yeah. The cover art is incredible. And the sizes of these are pretty good. Emma, you were saying this is like your favorite size of book before we went live, didn't you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the paperbacks that are currently, I think they're called mass market
paperbacks. Yeah.
They're just too small. I don't know. There's something about holding it in your hand. I need it to be a little wider. That's why I like hardcovers. But yeah, the size is like really, I think it's perfect.
Yeah, and they got some solid new art. And in the back of at least Bane and Thrawn, you get prologues, which are the first chapter or so of the next book in the trilogy. So these might also be really great if you have friends that you want to like loan out these books to. It's a solid paperback. You don't get to lend out that hardcover because don't lend out your hardcovers. What are we doing here? And of course in the chat, they did point out Shatterpoint is also getting an unabridged audiobook that comes out on Audible tomorrow. So check that out. Thank you again for sending those our way. I can't wait to like dive back into these and bring them to work because on my breaks I like to read, but I don't like bringing the hardcovers in the backpack because the cover, my Ahsoka dust jacket is a little ripped and it's like that's hard to get now. So can't wait. Pick those up tomorrow again wherever books are sold. But if you want to, use that sweet Youtini affiliate link. You know you want to help us get that 3% on Amazon.
That's sweet, sweet Youtini affiliate link.
All right, clip that audio, use it all the time. Two other things we wanted to bring up. Coming up in 2 weeks from tonight, actually, is an event, a virtual launch event that Barnes & Noble is putting on, celebrating the second wave of first phase still of the High Republic. Wes, you want to throw up that graphic? They're going to have a completely free virtual event featuring Kevin Scott, Daniel Jose Older, Justina Ireland, Charles Soule, and Claudia Gray, all talking about the High Republic. Now all of their projects in the first wave have come out. They can talk freely, and they're going to preview a little bit of what's coming up the next day, right, with Rising Storm and Race to Crash Point Tower. And, of course, with Justina Ireland's Out of the Shadows coming out next week. This is a free event, but you do have to register for it. And luckily for you, it's at 6 p.m. Eastern. That's 2 hours before the Living Force. So you can do both, everyone. We don't have to choose. They always do them at the exact same time as our show. And I get why, but I'm really glad they're not this time. So go on.
They're afraid of the competition's what it is.
Yeah.
They have to they're trying to push us out. We know what's going on. Barnes and Noble. You know,
this little indie bookstore. Come on. Go on Del Rey's Twitter account. They have all the information there. Super easy. I registered. It's like 2 clicks, right? So we hope to see you there. You can submit questions that you want them to answer. So maybe they'll do that. And again, anytime that all the Luminous crew gets together, it's just the best, isn't it? Like they seem like they're such good friends.
Yeah, they totally do.
I love it. I love them. Love the High Republic, as evident by the Rising Storm 2 weeks from tonight. Last thing I want to talk about tonight is a little bit of a weird thing that I never really like to talk about. And that's like my personal life, because this weekend, I think Wes and I might have talked about this last week. At least we did unofficially off air, that we were doing a cable management weekend. And so we did this weekend. In addition to Wes's softball, I did all my cable management for my desk setup. I put up shelves finally, and I put up my lightsabers, and I took a picture of it and I put it on Twitter. And for some reason, seeing all my lightsabers on my wall is the most viral tweet I've ever had. A lot of Spanish-speaking Star Wars fans have picked it up. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that liked my desks and like my lightsabers. And to those of you who are now arguing in the comments on my tweet about why Rey isn't a Skywalker, shut up. But that's how I know it got far. So if any of you didn't see, I'm going to take one moment of vanity that I'm very proud of. Wes, if you could throw this up, this is what I look at now as I do the living force. This is my
perfect.
setup.
So good.
This is such a Star Wars flex, which
Like
I vote that we refer to as a Dex.
A Dex. Hello, Dex.
Flexiest. I mean,
absolutely.
Look at your setup, your sweet cube computer. I've always wanted a case that's a cube like that. And
it's so useful. I thought I was
everything is so well done. It's so well like positioned, and then it's all like straight and like uniform, unlike Corey's 2 posters that he has on the right side of his wall where he hangs his guitar.
And I gotta give props are due. Charlie helped me put all this stuff up. She has an eye for like even stuff. I'm very bad at like eyeballing anything, but we also got a laser level, so everything worked out. Again, thank you to everyone. And hey, if you want to know how I hung up my lightsabers, go on my Twitter. I put the Etsy link all over the place. They're like $6 a piece. They're super great. Support Etsy artists that are trying to help out Star Wars fans. Jacob asked in the chat if the desk was worth it. As of now, it is. I figured out to make it work for myself. I have no cables going under it. It's all in the cable management tray. It's all nice. Velcro strapped together. I'm very happy. All right, enough vanity for myself. Let's go to vanity for Youtini, which is our Patreon updates. We want to say thank you to Duncan McRennell and Adrian, who 1, upgraded to a yearly subscription, and then 2, raised a tier level in Patreon. Thank you. Just thank you so much for that. It means you like what we're doing and like what we're putting out, and you want to help support it and help the site keep going, help the podcast continue to grow. We so appreciate that. And one more reminder to you and to ourselves that our trivia night is coming. We are going to be planning it, excuse me, this weekend or next. While Corey's on night shift, we try to bother him as little as possible with like planning things because it seems terrible. Night shift just seems awful. So we want him in the best state of mind possible to get super inebriated and then do Star Wars trivia. Yes. So stay tuned. Again, any suggestions you have, tweet them at us, throw them in any Discord channel at any of us on the show. We will take them. We will do them. We can't wait to see you for another incredibly memorable, at least for the people watching, night of Youtini Patreon. All right. With all that being said, there's no weekly roundup because it's a roundtable. There's no book reviews because it's a roundtable. But keep those reviews coming on youtini.com. Make sure you get those star ratings. Next week, we'll bring back the reviews. Tell us what you thought of Greater Good or any other book. Woo! All right, Charles, I kept it under 10 minutes. No, dang it, 13 minutes. Close enough. Let's do a really quick merch ad, see Jose's glorious brilliance, and then Charles, take us back to Thrawn Ascendancy, Greater Good. Full spoilers ahead. We'll see you in a second.
All right, another beautiful merch ad from Jose. I enjoy those, hopefully as much as all the people watching this stream enjoy those.
Have you picked up the fanny pack yet?
I haven't gotten a fanny pack. I haven't gotten a fanny pack mostly because I don't typically wear fanny packs, but I will buy any Youtini branded things that I do wear. I need a new beanie. That's what I need. Maybe I should reach out to
Youtini hats.
For that.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's like 4 Youtini beanies that ever got made, and Meg has one, and it always looks
Plus
so
Youtini
awesome.
beanie just sounds so catchy.
Youtini beanie.
A U-beanie.
A U-beanie.
Yeah, with an eye. Oh, hey, Blind Face in the chat got the neurotransmitter affection shirt. Awesome.
Oh,
you got
nice.
that
Before it got put into the dust.
That's right. And into the Youtini vault. We're taking that from Disney. All right, Charles. Tell us about Thrawn.
Let's do it.
Make us answer questions.
All right, so let's jump back into the round table. If y'all remember last week, we talked about the characters, and we really mostly got through the protagonists. So this week we are going to pick up with the villains. And I got to start with Haplif of the Agbui. Okay, and first of all, ew, right?
Ew!
Like the very first thing that we have to do if we're going to really dive into this character is we have to talk about his physical description. And the very first full physical description for this character is from page 56. And it's talking about just Agbui in general. All right, and the quote says this: "Their facial skin was a mess of dark red and off-white folds, the mix of the two colors seemingly at random. Their mouths were lipless slits tucked away amidst the folds. Their eyes were black and yet somehow bright and clear." So did this species gross you out as much as it did me?
Yeah.
I couldn't
Heck
really
yes.
picture
Smile.
I can picture it after we talked about it a couple weeks ago, how we said that there's like that Haplif for the Agbui is like an Arby's roast beef sandwich. It's layered on top of layer.
Without the buns.
Correct.
Without the buns.
Yeah. I'll be honest.
Disgusting.
It was also a bit hard for me to picture, like, because I'm getting spoiled by like the High Republic art and stuff and all these things that I'm getting all these visual things that my brain is forgetting how to make pictures in my own head sometimes. And I'm like, I don't know, a new species. And then we never name like the Agbui. Okay, I don't know.
Mhm.
It's not on the Wook. So like Star Wars is hard for me in that way. I'm a bad fan. I'm a fake fan.
I just don't like that they can touch people's faces and figure out what they're thinking. I just
It's
don't
creepy,
like that.
right?
It's
Don't
disgusting.
like that.
It's I kind of think of them as like one of those deep sea fish that's never meant to see the light of day, and then James Cameron goes down there in a submarine, and we have to see it on the big screen.
Like the
So-
one with
Oh
the
my
light
God.
that hangs above its head.
Yes,
There's
that-
exactly. Those are Agbui.
All right, done.
Well, so we first meet Haplif early on in this book when he's inspecting the last planet that kind of fell to his machinations. It was on page 16 and 17. And we get this quote: "Now that Jixtus mentioned it, there was indeed subtle signs of the global destruction down there. The clouds on the sunlit side, which would be glistening white on an untouched world, were here laced with gray and black from the fire and blast debris thrown up from the vicious civil war that he and his team had engineered. On the night side, the clusters of city lights that had once shone cheerfully in the darkness had all but vanished." Haplif smiled to himself. The near total destruction of an entire world, and it had all been accomplished in barely 6 months. 6 months. Yes, he was that good. All right, so we immediately knew that Haplif was dangerous. Okay, message received. Did you like the addition of Haplif in this story as like an agent of Jixtus, or were you coming in hoping and expecting to see Jixtus in action?
Ooh.
I really liked him as an agent of the evil overlord, if you will. That's one of the reasons why I rated this book a lot higher than I originally intended, was because I liked the espionage fact that Haplif kind of came in there and was trying to overthrow. While if the audiobook, he sounds like a granddad when he's talking to these people.
Yeah, totally.
He sounds like he's like, "Oh, hello, are you okay? I am Haplif."
That sounds like an SNL character.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I really liked him being in instead of Jixtus. I think we should get the big battle with Jixtus, or him revealing himself in the last book.
I mean, Jixtus doesn't really seem like the type of person to do his own dirty work. So in that case, I'm glad that we got Haplif. When you're reading that quote, Charles, I totally forgot about this because it was so early on in the book. But I can't believe that they mentioned that he and his team had caused a civil war on another planet, and that was really foreshadowing the end of this book. Like when you were reading that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, mind blown."
Yeah, I totally forgot about that as well. And I was going to point out so we don't forget it. And I want to read the comment word for word, but because we're going to talk about it at the end. But Stephanie Mack, if you're watching us live, just put out a great point in the chat, and I'm just going to leave it there. But we are going to come back to that. But I agree. I thought Haplif was fascinating. I thought that it was a really cool villain. After you give the Benevolent, who we agreed was such a great character, for Thrawn, someone that's actually finally as smart as Thrawn, I thought Haplif was also very competent, but totally different than Yiv. And I really enjoyed that. And oh my God, the sinister, chaotic nature of Half-Life. Like when he was like, oh, well, I'm going to shoot you out of an airlock, I guess. Oopsie.
Yes.
Like just like the dude, he's a serial killer. Very much flipped on a dime. And I do agree, though. I wanted more of Jixtus, but not in a way that I think that should have happened. I love the idea that in book 1, you fight a lieutenant. And in book 2, you fight a lieutenant. And then in like every video game boss battle, book 3, the 3rd round, all right, now the general comes out. You know, I think it works out very well. And like the chat is saying right now, he wouldn't have done his own dirty work this early. And the fact that it's a trilogy really just sets Zahn up for that big confrontation in Lesser Evil later this year.
Yeah, agreed. Well, you know, despite their looks, these aliens had some other off-putting qualities as well. And on page 162, the farmer, Lagfro, states, they're so damn touchy. They want to touch you all the time. Lagfro said, an unpleasant shiver running through him, that Half-Life mostly. I'm trying to explain our contour blending on our hillside plots, and he's trying to touch my hair or the back of my neck or someplace. It's creepy. And so, Emma, you just brought this up. It really is creepy. And as readers, we knew that Half-Life had these telepathic abilities, and so he needed to touch, you know, other people to read into their emotions. But despite that, did you find their overall touchiness just uncomfortable to read?
Yeah, 100%. Mostly because it made the other characters uncomfortable. So I feel like that makes us uncomfortable as well. Just and when you think about it, we wouldn't like somebody constantly touching us, like somebody that we barely know. Half-Life barely knew Lagfro and his family, yet he was being like super touchy with them. And I think, it was super uncomfortable and definitely grossed me out. And I feel like when I think about Half-Life and the Agbui, I kind of think more about their touchiness more than their creepy looks.
Yeah. Quick PSA from your friends in the Living Forest in Youtini. We're all going to be going out to bars again soon. That's great. The world is opening up again. My dudes, remember how creepy it was when Half-Life would just touch people he didn't know? Maybe we take that and just remember it when we're out in the world at bars around people we don't know that probably don't want to be touched.
Feels like a good idea.
Yeah.
Celebration, maybe. Let's hug, but maybe not as much touching.
You raise a good point. And I'm curious. Do you think that this villain and his touchiness, was it made even creepier by the fact that this book came out amidst the pandemic when we're not supposed to be like they did not social distance at all. At all. Like, did that make it worse, do you think?
Yeah, I think we're all a little bit more sensitive to touching and germs and things along those lines. So like reading that of a person coming, just touching the back of your neck is creepy in general, like even doing it to yourself. And I think and like you were saying, Eric, like if you're going to the bars with your friends, just like don't be a Half-Life, and then have your friends say that to you. And say, hey, if you're getting too close, you're like, Half-Life! Like, he's like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot. I shouldn't be a Half-Life.
I mean,
I love that.
We talked, God, how many episodes ago? We talked about something where like writers are products of their time, right? No matter their age, whenever a book comes out and you're writing, it's impossible to escape the world in which you are writing. So, I mean, I'm not saying that Zahn wrote like a quarantine book. He obviously wrote this, I think, probably before the pandemic was in full swing. But still, the idea of touching was really creepy. The absence of consent is like these are things that are in the zeitgeist, and I think to make that not preachy at all, but just legit creepy. It's like, yeah, maybe it wouldn't have been as creepy if it would have been written during like, I don't know, Splinter of the Mind's Eye when nothing was creepy. Apparently, it's just a little different, or even like Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, but I think interestingly, we talked about how the Agbui, they need to touch you to kind of read into your mind, but they're not exactly reading your mind or your thoughts, right? They're kind of reading your emotions and what was referred to in this book as your life craving, right? And So I'm curious, did y'all appreciate a villain with that kind of an ability? Someone who operated with nuance and cleverness and subtlety, as opposed to Yiv the Benevolent, who will just hit you over the head with a hammer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really cool to get a more Thrawn-like villain, someone that uses more of their brain than their brawn.
Yeah.
Even if it's through a really creepy power, because life cravings, that's a disgusting way to put it.
Yeah.
What a phrase.
There's
what
no
a phrase,
tiptoeing
Vaughn.
around that phrase, right?
No.
Yeah, and I think like to bring back the Civil War point that we talked about earlier, and I know we'll talk about later, like it's a great way for Zahn to write, because what causes war? What causes giant conflicts? It's whispers, it's nudges, it's really small moves here and there. It's not a guy coming in being like, I'm going to conquer. It's like little people in the shadows being like, see how he's looking at you? Don't you want to do that? And like, it seems like the Ag Buoy are like, cool, 6 months, bam, we can do that because we just nudge and nudge and nudge and nudge. And it's very Thrawn-esque as you know, as far as Thrawn as we know him later in the Empire.
Yeah, it is a good match for Thrawn's abilities, I think. But Haplif, he wasn't just a gross dude caressing your cheek. On page 271.
Wait, there's more.
There's more. Yeah, and Eric, you brought this up earlier, but on page 271, we have this quote here. 6 hours later, when Haplif was sure Yopanek was fast asleep in his room, he had the ship leave hyperspace just long enough to release Yomi's body into the vast emptiness of space. And then later on page 365, when Haplif and Lackfro have their final standoff, we have this quote here. And with that, Haplif realized he was going to have to kill him. He'd hoped to avoid any more killing, not for any moral reasons, but because it was such an unpleasant feeling to wrap his fingers around someone's throat and feel their fear and hopelessness as he drained the life from them. On the other hand, he'd never really liked Lackfro. This killing he might actually enjoy. And it's just so casual, right? The way that he talks about taking the life of another person and how personal it is. Yeah, it just, I mean, to think that he is feeling all those emotions if he's killing someone with his hands. I mean, it's just so dark.
Dude is Trey Young in a playoff game. Just ice in the veins, cold-blooded villain.
I never really thought about that. So it's like a double killing. He can definitely feel it when he's touching him, and then he's actually killing him by squeezing the life out of him. That's a good way to. I never even thought it like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I know the answer, but last question about Haplif. Is he an effective villain for y'all in this book? Did you fear him as an adversary of the Chiss?
Yeah, I did for sure. And I think the reason why is because he seems unsuspecting. You know, he comes in and he's like, oh, have some of my jewelry. And you don't expect him to, want to kill you. And clearly he has no morals because he didn't want to not kill someone for moral reasons. And that's disturbing. So I think some of the scariest villains are villains that you don't suspect. Villains that are kind of lurking under the shadows. And the fact that he could easily sneak into a society and just kill people without them even having a clue is probably one of the most terrifying things about a villain for me.
Right.
Yeah, I got nothing to add. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
It's like serial killers do the same. They kind of turn into your friend, or they want you to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And like the only person who actually was questionable about Haplif was Lackfro, and and everybody else was buying into his game. But Lackfro was like, "There's something about this Haplif of the Ag Buoy, Haplif of the Arby's roast beef." But
Emma, to put your words into a phrase that we have here in the Carolinas, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, right? And no one knows any of the devils in this book.
That's right.
They don't know about Haplif, and they certainly don't know about Jixtis, who we're going to talk about next. The mystery man himself, the one who calls the shots from behind the curtain. And, after those gross quotes about Hapleaf's roast beef-like appearance, let's cleanse our palates with what little we know about Jixtus's appearance, because we got a little bit more than we did in Chaos Rising. On page 16, he's described as a veiled being with an exotic voice, a strange mixture of rasping and melodic, wrapped up inside an obscure accent. And then Hapleaf thinks to himself, he'd never seen Jixtus without his cloak and hood, his gloves concealing his hands, his black veil covering his face. He had no idea what the creature looked like. And then just a few pages later, Hapleaf again says, with the obscuring cloak, hood, and veil hiding all the usual cues of face and eyes, Jixtus could be nearly anyone from virtually any bipedal species. For that matter, for all the evidence of Hapleaf's eyes and ears, he might be sitting next to one of the demons from Agbui myth he'd so often been threatened with as a child. So I'm curious what your thoughts were on this. Now, we're going to get around to what's underneath all of the cloak and the hood and all of that, but he's kind of like the Emperor with even more coverings, isn't he?
Yeah. So the first thing,
like a leper.
The first thing that I thought about was Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget. How you never see him but one arm and the fat cat, but that doesn't really that's Hapleaf, I guess. But yeah, you never see who it is.
Yeah. I dug it. I mean, I think that the villain who's cloaked till the end turnaround is the most, there's no trope older, right? I mean, it was great. I'm glad that, Thanos and the Avengers got the turn, and you got the Emperor as Palpatine, like all these guys. It was good mystery, but the reveal, which I don't know. The reveal is so much. It's so epitomizes this character.
Well, let's just talk about it. Let's just get it out there, right? If you're listening to this and you don't know the reveal yet, we're going to take you there now. So why all the secrecy? Why the hood? Why the veil? Why the gloves? Well, on page 404, we get our answer when Jixtus says, the Grisks lay blame only where it's deserved and only on those who fail us. Each of our servants is responsible solely for his own decisions and actions, not for another's. Yes, sir, Kalori said, feeling his winglets and his tension subsiding. Grisks. He'd never heard of a species by that name, or a faction, if that's what they were, or a combine, or a gang, or something else entirely. A name by itself really didn't contain much information, but at least now he had a name to put to the manipulators behind all this. So,
the Grisks!
The Grisks! Eric is in the far, far background of his camera, flailing. That's right, guys. Jixtus is a Grixkus. That's what I'm going to refer to him as.
Oh my God, the Slack message Charles sent to me after this happened. Oh my God.
I sent the Regina George meme. Stop trying to make Grisks happen. But tell me, y'all.
Sorry. Oh my God. Reading this.
Go.
People wonder what it's like getting review copies of books. And you know what? It's great. But when you're the one person you know that finds out this turn and no one else has finished it yet, it is maddening. Okay, go ahead, Charles.
Well,
what about it?
What are your actual thoughts and feelings on this? So Jixtus is a Grisk. Now, in case you guys are first coming to Thrawn in this trilogy, that might not mean a lot to you. And I think, Wes, you and I talked behind the scenes. Yeah, you're raising your hand. You did not read all of the previous Thrawn books. So if you have, you know who the Grisks are. You've seen them in action. You've seen Thrawn fight with them. So it almost seems like a duh. Of course, right? We have to introduce the Grisks before they come up then. But it really wasn't a done deal. What were y'all's thoughts when it was revealed? Like, Wes, what did you think about hearing Grisk? And then Eric and Emma, if you're more familiar with them, what were your thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, so I did not read Thrawn Alliances or Thrawn... the other one, Treason. I did not read those two. So when I read this part about the Grisks, I was just like Keylori. I've never heard of the species before, if it was a faction or whatever. And then Charles had had sent me a message that day. Was like, "How mad were you? How mad were you about the end?" And I was like, "You mean about Thurfian? Yeah, that's crazy, right?" He was like, "No, you fool, the grist." And I was like, "Oh yeah, the grist. It's nuts, right?"
Oh.
No clue. Not a clue. I was just. It could have been anything. It could have literally been anything.
Yeah.
And I'd have made the same reaction. So sorry. I guess I should have read those, smashed those books out in 2 days too, so I could have had a better reveal.
Man. I don't know. Emma, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised, and also I feel like I kind of blacked out when I read it for a second. Like I was like, wait, what? Hang on, what? And then it was like that gif of that guy like with the map and the craziness and pointing everywhere. Yeah, I felt like that guy. I was like, oh my god, this is wild. But yeah, I mean, part of me, I'm glad that we got this reveal before the third book, because for some reason I honestly thought that Jixtus was a Chiss. Even though Happily described him as like a creature, I honestly thought he was going to be a Chiss, but I'm so much happier that he's a Grisk. I think that's a cool twist.
Yeah, I think we even theorized on Chaos Rising that like Jixtus might be like Thrawn's sister or something like. And then, so yeah, if you all listen to our Thrawn Treason Roundtable, which is like early Living Force, right? Oh, what we lads we were. We made a joke about calling it like Thrawn Grisk, because Zahn clearly was just trying to push these characters. He's like, Grisk, they're awful and they're the bad guys, and it didn't, for some folks at least, it didn't really gel, because it seemed like the publishers wanted an Empire story, and Zahn's like, yeah, but I like these Grisk guys. So when I read that, I had a similar reaction to Jacob in the chat. Did he actually just do this? And also I had to like, oh man, you know what? Slow clap. Well done. You did it. Because it worked out. It's natural. It makes sense. Like you're saying, it's totally obvious now in retrospect. And I was just like, you know what, Zahn? You clearly wanted to write this book, and you tried once and it didn't work out as well. But now you seeded it in. You finally got them. And now I am actually very ready for them to come full circle in Lesser Evil to do the book I think he wanted to write with Treason in the first place. So if we had to get a couple of those books, which again, I'm not a huge fan of, I know some people are, in order to get to this point, totally fine. Totally legit. So back earlier, Stephanie Mack, who's our Thrawn expert in the chat right now, she put earlier that the Agbui totally have to be the long-fingered creatures who were touching people in Thrawn Treason for the Grisk. And I'm like, I think that totally works. It makes me want to go back and read that, which is also a point I wanted to make, that once that reveal happened, it honestly made me want to go back and read Treason.
Agreed.
So very solid. Well done, Zahn. You pulled the rug out from under us and you got what you wanted. I applaud you.
Yeah. I liked the reveal more. I just like this trilogy more, I think, than I liked mostly Thrawn Alliances and Treason. I really loved the first canon Thrawn novel, but yeah, I mean, he's a Grisk, and so we're gonna see this kind of all come to a head in the third book here. And you know what is Jixtus trying to accomplish then, right? On page 403, he's still talking to Kalori. Yeah. He's still talking to Kalori, and he says, "You are right to be concerned about this Chiss officer, though. I'll be sure to add Senior Captain Thrawn into our calculations in the future." "I would definitely recommend that," Kalori said, his cheek winglets twitching. "I wish I could offer some hints on how to defeat him." "Defeat isn't always necessary," Jixtus said. "Isolation and neutralization can be equally effective." So Jixtus is probably going to be the orchestrator of Thrawn's exile. Do you think?
Yeah,
right? Because that's how you would isolate him, right? You have him exiled, and we know where all this is going to some degree, at least. I'm curious. Do you think Jixtus is going to be working with any Chiss to accomplish this, like maybe a Thurfian who also has it out for Thrawn?
Wow, Charles, you just this isolation and neutralization can be equally effective. I didn't even put that into what would happen in the future. What we already know has happened. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Having possibly working with Thurfian, because Thurfian, and as we all know, he's not a fan of Thrawn, and even though they're in the same family, so that could be a plot twist that comes about. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I didn't think about that either. I'm liking how this trilogy is tying into the first canon trilogy. There's a lot of littler tie-ins, or smaller tie-ins, I should say, and then there's some bigger tie-ins like with the Grisk. And I think, Charles, I think you're going to be totally right on this with the isolation and neutralization, where we lead up to the first Thrawn book with his exile on that abandoned planet. That is just so sinister, and I love it.
Yeah, I definitely think that they could be working together, because it definitely seems like Jixtus's plan is to essentially create a Chiss civil war that threatens to rip apart the Ascendancy completely. And I think we could, speculation is something we try to avoid, but I think that there's an idea of a Palpatine Luke scene where Jixtus is like, Thrawn, look, the Ascendancy is about to tear itself apart. You can make it all go away if you just leave. And if you exile yourself, I will spare your race, or something for a while, or something like that. I can see Jixtus, like, again, manipulating. He's already almost caused a civil war at the end of this book with not a lot,
Right.
So if he uses his full intelligence, his full power by himself, fully mano a mano against Thrawn, I think using the guy who's been trying to take Thrawn down as a weapon is a very great logical step that, again, like Wes and Emma said, I hadn't even thought about before.
Well, tell me what your thoughts are on Jixtus. Final thoughts. What do you hope to see out of him in Lesser Evil? Where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I hope that I hope that we get to see more of him in the mix. Even though I said earlier that he doesn't seem like the type of person to do his own dirty work, I do hope that we're seeing him sort of in the fight a little bit more. I want to know, like, what his end goal is with Thrawn. Like, sure, Thrawn is a threat to him, like, militarily, but what is his end goal with that? And I'd love to sort of get into his head a little bit more. And I honestly think we are going to get that in the next book.
Yeah, I'd like to see him orchestrate, like you said, the Thrawn being exiled, but I also want to see him, like, go back into the shadows and kind of come back up in some other way. This won't be the end of him. I kind of want him to hang around, because he seems very cunning. He seems like he has a lot of people or he can make a lot of people work for him. So, man, what if no, that can't be it. I was about to say, like, what if the Grisk are, like, I don't know, they're allies with oh God, what are the evil people from the High Republic?
The Nile.
Zangier?
The Nile. They have some kind
Nile.
of relationship with the Nile, or did.
There's something
We don't
there.
That's nuts. Yeah.
I'll go a little easier route. I'm gonna agree with Jacob, almost word for word what he just put in the chat. I think the memory chapters are gonna be from Jixtus's point of view in Lesser Evil. Really kind of figure out why he hates the Chiss so much. Why, like, as a youth, something happened, I'm sure. And then I think that all the time given to Halfleaf in this book will be given to Jixtus properly in Lesser Evil. I think we'll see him at the height of his powers, really going for it. And I that's what we've wanted. That's how you create a trilogy, right? Your big Voldemort didn't come back till the 5th book, or 4th book, but and then it's the Voldemort show. So I think it's things like that. And I'm really excited for him to do that. And I really want to know more about his past. I want to know why he's doing it. Even if it's not all of it, I need something other than I need to defeat Thrawn. Because that's not the most exciting thing. And I think Zahn, at least at this point in his career with this trilogy, has proven he's a better writer than that. And like we've said since Chaos Rising, I think this is the story he's wanted to tell. So I think he's putting it all out there in Lesser Evil in the fall.
Yeah. I mean, I I highly doubt that Thrawn's going to leave too many plot, threads untied. He's a pretty tidy writer. He tends to wrap things up really well. And I will mention though that Jixtus does say specifically. Let's see. It was earlier. It was around page 400 or so. He says. Let's see, some of his colleagues thought that Yiv was going to take care of the Chiss, but unfortunately he knew better. So I don't know that he's even necessarily like, I don't know, the king of the Grisk. Like he kind of is working amidst the team. And Wes, and for anyone that hasn't read some of those other Thrawn novels, we never get Jixtus by name in those books. And
That's true.
there are real world reasons for that, right? He wasn't a created character yet, but he could die. We don't know. And the Grisks just continue their ploy to take over the entire galaxy. How deliciously evil.
Absolutely.
But that is all the questions that I have about the antagonists. I did want to give a quick shout out to Kaloria Vuandalan, who's still kicking it, because I love that guy and his little cheek winglets.
Right on.
But we don't have time.
He's a great character for the Mandalorian.
Oh yeah,
Ooh,
that'd
yeah.
be great.
Yeah, I love that guy. I really do.
Played by Gilbert Gottfried or something weird.
Oh man, what perfect fan casting.
The Mandalorian. You want to go to Alderaan? It's rocks. That's all I got.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move into the overarching questions. I want to know straight off the bat, how did Greater Good compare to Chaos Rising for y'all?
I think I liked it more than Chaos Rising, which I didn't think was going to be possible. But I think it honestly has to do with just being more used to the Chiss hierarchy and the families and things like that. I sort of got a lot of that under my belt with Chaos Rising. So I think Greater Good was more enjoyable because of that. And also just sort of building on that mystery that was already being established in Chaos Rising just made it more of a page turner for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're more familiar with the hierarchy and the political structure, so it was kind of easier to read. You didn't have to keep flipping back to that, like the fourth page, to see what the hierarchy was. To see like, oh, this person's a speaker. Like, how does that hold up to the family?
I still don't know.
But there was, I mean, when they did they had a lot more battles, like space battles in the first book. So, I mean, it whenever they say like he shot this way and then he kind of veered to starboard, I'm just like trying to think like, which way is that? And
what are vectors? What are we doing here?
Yeah. But they didn't have that much in Greater Good, and Greater Good kind of I thought it flowed a lot better than Chaos Rising did. But they're still both great books.
Yeah, I'll probably put Greater Good only slightly below Chaos Rising, only because I love Chaos Rising. I think Greater Good is really, really great as well. I think it was very accessible, again, because of what Em and Wes said. We kind of got the pre-reading from the first book, so you kind of got what was going on. I think I liked Thalius's journey in Chaos Rising a little more than like Lakinda and a few of the other things that tried to supplement it in Greater Good, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really nice sequel. And again, going from the drop off of Thrawn to Thrawn Alliances was kind of a whiplash of the neck. So it was nice not to have that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, I really like a lot of the political stuff, even though I don't fully understand it in these books. I do enjoy it. I mean, like I like tracing family trees and stuff in Lord of the Rings lore and like that kind of stuff, right? Like trying to figure out, wait, how is Aragorn the rightful king? Like, let me dig into this. And so it sounds like some of y'all enjoy those aspects and some of y'all don't enjoy it as much. But we did get a lot of information, still new information about the Chiss family hierarchy in this novel. You know, we knew there were the ruling families, the 9 ruling families, like the Myth, like the Arizi, and the 40 great families. But now we know for a fact those numbers kind of fluctuated over time. For instance, the Zodlak family, which was heavily featured in this novel, used to be one of the ruling families before they got demoted. And I'm curious, do you enjoy learning more about this type of thing, or does it just make your head spin?
I liked it.
I love it, Charles.
I liked hearing the background about how I guess how their actions are being affected from what had happened in the past. So it's not just because of recent events of why everybody's upset with each other or why the Zodlak aren't one of the 9 ruling families they're just trying to get in. It's like, well, why did that happen? Like, oh, I used to be in the 9 ruling families, but I got put in timeout. So, like, the background I really enjoy. I love the history and in all books, not just Star Wars.
Yeah, it's very much like, you're a Zodlak. You're one of the ruling families. I used to be. Like, very much that vibe.
Yeah, it's like a research. Like, you research like facts so you can be able to debate somebody on why something is the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we learned more Chiss lore in this book because it shows that the first book wasn't just a huge info dump, and that and that we're still building on that lore, even though we didn't get as much as the first one, which is understandable. So, yeah, give me more Chiss lore. I love it.
Yeah, Chiss lore, the new album by Taylor Swift coming out 2022.
And it can get in the way or feel like it slows down the plot in some of these books. So I would love like a coffee table reference book of just like Chiss history.
I love when you talk
like
dirty
family
on these shows
trees and stuff like that. That would that would be fun. But I want to talk a little bit about, for those of you who are familiar with Legends. That's right. I said Legends. If I say Legends one more time, Jared's going to pop up in the chat. For those of you who are familiar with Legends, I'm curious if you're enjoying how much of Zahn's Legends material he is managing to pull into canon. And just in case you're not familiar, I picked a few things to kind of pull out just to show you what I'm talking about. And so, first of all, the vast majority of Chiss culture has been consistent with what we saw in Legends, including the naming convention, family hierarchies, the expansionary defense fleet. Like, all of that is from the old material. We've also had some recurring characters, right, with Aralani and Thras, who's been brought up a couple of times now. But now we're adding in like full events from Legends, like full events from these books, like Thrawn's defeating the Vigari using an unsanctioned attack, and then his appropriation of their interdiction field technology. Like, that's just outbound flight. That's just outbound flight. So shout out to Legends Look Back for bringing me up to speed on that. And spoiler alert, even the overall story here seems to be somewhat mirroring Legends, because Thrawn learns in Legends of an outside alien threat and then later works with Sidious, or for Sidious rather, to help defend the Empire against it. Now in canon, that alien threat seems like it's the Grisks, whereas in Legends it was the Yuuzhan Vong. But perhaps we're going to see Thrawn's story kind of play out exactly like it did in Legends here in canon. What do you guys think? Hearing all of that, knowing it came pretty much from Legends, like, does that excite you? Does that confuse you? Like, what do you think?
As someone that hasn't really read many of these books, and the ones I have read, I don't really remember, I really like it. I enjoy it. I don't know how someone might feel if they were like really into the Thrawn Legends books. I don't know if they might think that it was a little bit too on the nose, but I really like how we're connecting things between Legends and canon. Even though it's not the exact same story, we've still got a little bit of that connective tissue.
Yeah, I mean, one, good on Zahn as a writer. You wrote one story and got paid like Del Rey money, and then you wrote it again and got paid Disney money. So like, good on you for getting that double check. But also, it's kind, in a weird way, this kind of stuff is kind of what a lot of Legends fans are asking for, right? Like, for in the grander scheme, like, and at no point on this show do we say like Legends will become canon, like straight up. We love the new stuff, and there are a lot of new things in this series, but a lot of Legends fans say like they want the deep lore to remain. Like when Darth Bane got brought back in Clone Wars, like now Thrawn stuff gets brought back. Like, this is good story. And that's kind of been at least Youtini's point since the beginning. Like, there's so much good stuff in Legends. Why not bring a bunch of it back if it works? If it doesn't, all right, great, write something new. Mm-hmm. But if it already works and you got the guy that wrote it in the first place that still thinks, hey, I think I can still make this work and I would like to do that, awesome. What? There's no downside. Zero.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not linear either, right? So it can expand to this. Bringing on the information from Legends, it makes it the expanded universe even wider, right? So I mean, there's even more that you can throw into what's already been put into canon. And I read the original Thrawn trilogy. So I mean, geez, if they brought some of that into canon, I don't know. It's a little bit far fetched, but it'd be nice. Maybe mention here or there.
Jixtus's final lieutenant, Mara Jade. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No.
I can't believe you said that word.
For legal reasons, he's kidding.
I'm kidding.
Well, we'll see about that. And those of you who don't know what we're talking about, or you don't know what happened in the original Legends Thrawn trilogy, head on over to our sister podcast, Legends, to look back. I'm sure they're happy to fill you in for that.
And pick up the new Legends Essentials, Heir to the Empire, on sale tomorrow, wherever books are sold.
Absolutely. But we've covered a lot here already, but it's time to jump into some heavier material. Like mass suicide and whatnot that almost happened in this book, right? Woo! Yay, escapism. That's why I read these books, to get away from the terrible things that happen in our real lives. Now, one of the major plot points in this novel was that the Magus, matriarch of her entire planet, was ordering the mass suicide of her people once she believed that their planet had been lost. So first questions first. I mean, did that plot point surprise you to get something that dark and that heavy brought to the forefront of this book?
For sure. Like when I read that, my eyes kind of like went, whoa, it was shocking. You don't really hear about stuff like that in Star Wars too much. And I think the main question that I had was, why would she want that for her people? And I think it made for an interesting plot point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it frustrated me. It frustrated me that she wouldn't budge from her decision. And Thrawn and Thalius, they gave good arguments of not killing yourself, and she was just like, "No, I have to kill my people." That's for you, Eric.
Yeah. Thank you. I was like, I forgot how it went. I knew someone had to do it. Jacob's been waiting for that for weeks. I want to go on the record here and say us at the Living Forest and Youtini are firmly anti-mass suicide. Just to get that out. I think that's helpful. But also, I don't think it did surprise me. Only because I think a lot of Star Wars literature lately is getting to these dark topics. I mean, we are dealing with people going through intense mental breakdowns. The first
Victor's Prize, anybody?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
The first Star Wars movie ever, like in the first 20 minutes, the inciting incident is a mass genocide by a giant space laser. So like, it's kind of mass death is weirdly nothing new, but I thought it was handled very well. And I liked how much.
If Leia had wanted a different target, a military target, she just had to name the system.
It's very amazing. Well done. This is great. I can sit back on this one. But I also loved, more so than how it affected me, I loved seeing how much it affected Thrawn. Like how just morally repulsed he was by the idea, and how he was like, he worked so hard and broke so many military rules to stop this one thing that, like, in military terms of loss of life, probably wouldn't have been that much comparatively to like a giant battle. But he was so intent on not letting this happen. And I thought that was a great storytelling point.
Well, it introduced this great conflict kind of in the background of everything else that was going on. And we know that the Magus, she didn't succeed in her plan, but that was mostly because of Thrawn. Like you're saying, Eric, he basically put her in like a stasis chamber. Right. And after he did that, there was a bit of a debate amongst the characters about whether or not that was actually the right thing to do. Actually, Mid-Captain Samacro, he talked to Thrawn and he said, her life is her business. It's certainly none of ours. To which Thrawn responded, I believe it is. All lives are important, and I resist the thought of standing by and watching 200 possibly needless deaths. So I'm not going to lie. I wanted to bring this point to the forefront after the discussion that I heard on Conja Book Club. I was listening to their episode that we had Cheryl feature on, and they talked for a long time about this point, and some were thinking Thrawn did the right thing. Some people were thinking that he didn't. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Did Thrawn do the right thing here?
Man. My gut says yes. You know, and not just because it's Thrawn, but because I agree that mass suicide is such a God. This is okay. This isn't the Victor's Price Roundtable, but we're getting close.
This is an overarching question.
Yeah, like it is a thing that unfortunately is not new in the history of humanity, in the history of fiction, right? And like the idea that a single leader that believes in some sort of either religious context or like traditional context that requires that is not inherently like damning the religious belief or anything like that, but is damning the action and can easily just be made as a manipulation of people that don't know better. And I think Thrawn is like, okay, I can respect your culture and I can respect this belief, but also say that if your belief necessitates the death of 200 innocent people, then it is no longer a belief. It is essentially an attack against innocence. Yeah. And I think that difference is hard. And I think he's clearly the only Chiss that would actually make it at this point.
I think he did the right thing for the other 200 people, or say for the followers, to try to get them to see a different point of view. The Magus just seems toxic to me, and she may or may not. What it seemed like is that she was not budging. She was going to order the 200 plus to kill themselves just so they can, because of their beliefs. But I mean, the followers, I think they may have been easily swoon over to that side to believe that way, may or may not. But then if they spoke with Thrawn or some other leader, then they could have been persuaded to go back the other way. But the Magus herself just seems toxic. I mean, she could probably just go.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I think Thrawn made the right decision. Although I can see both sides of the argument. I think, when Samacro says her life is her business, I tend to agree with that. But he dragged other people's, she, the Magus, dragged other people's lives into her business, making it not her business anymore. And so I think that's kind of where Thrawn was coming from, and that's why I tend to believe he did the right thing.
Yeah. Because it's kind of like you can trust people to have control over their own lives, but if your leader of like the Magus's level of status says do this, you're gonna probably do it, even if it's not what these innocent people want to do. And you can't expect 200 people to individually assert their own want of life when the person that has essentially led their destiny their whole life is telling them to do something else.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And you put it really well. Another character who put it really well in this book was actually, I think this was from Thalius on page 179. And she says, the Magus had ordered her companion to die. She'd taken that decision from him, that last final decision anyone could make. The aliens clearly considered that an acceptable thing to do. Thalius, coming from Chiss culture, didn't. But wasn't that exactly what she and Thrawn had done to the Magus herself? Hadn't they taken the right of decision away from her by forcibly sedating her and locking her into hibernation? From her point of view, hadn't they violated her rights? It was a troubling question. And so, y'all brought that point up. Maybe they did violate her rights individually, but given that she was then going to extend her plan towards hundreds of others, then, just from a utilitarian argument, it was the right thing to do. I got to tell you, this really stuck out to me, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but, in medicine, when people come to the emergency department and they say they're suicidal, that they're going to kill themselves, a lot of times these people are involuntarily committed to the hospital. So it's a part of American culture, medical culture, at least already, that it's actually an acceptable thing to do exactly what Thrawn did, even for the Magus herself. And so I'm not going to say whether that's right or wrong, or to tell you that whatever you think about it is right or wrong, but it really struck that chord in me to think about it in that scenario.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just to round it out, Blind Fates makes a good point. It goes back to what we said about reflecting the times, like the idea of how much consent do you have over your own body versus at what point does that affect other people too much to the point where other rules have to be set, and it shifts. And I think that's kind of
Mhm.
the dark beauty of things like Star Wars, that we can talk about these issues and talk about things in a fantastical context. But there are probably a lot of readers and maybe some listeners here that are going through certain things like this, or have family members or friends that are like that their actions for themselves are negatively affecting others. And maybe this story will at least start that conversation. Like you're saying, Charles, will spark some kind of idea that maybe they didn't have before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is incredible that something like Star Wars that is just swashbuckling fun at times really can introduce these ideas to us to discuss in these moments. So I think that's pretty awesome. But let's move on.
I don't have whiskey on this episode, so let's see how deep we go on this. My God.
Well, let's move on from that. I don't want to spend too much time in the darkness, and as we know, light will rise to meet it. And so let's talk about
I got to stop you. How do you how do you think her partner died? Remember, she had a partner.
Yeah.
So
you're right. I didn't explain that well. It was in that quote. So the Magus brought one companion with her on Thrawn's ship, and he did kill himself at her command.
Yep.
And so she was already harming other people, killing other people, essentially. How did he do it? I don't know. It's a great question. It felt like it popped his tooth off and bit a cyanide capsule kind of thing.
Maybe something like that. It's a
which
ship,
we've seen in Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they said that the Chiss tried to reach him in time and couldn't, but I don't think they went into detail, right?
Gruesome.
Maybe it was like a losing the will to live type of thing. Like if the Magus says it's time to go, it's time to go.
The old Padme time. All right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's talk about Lakinda on page 261. She has this thought. Aralani was 3 years older than Thrawn, and she'd known him at Taharim Academy. That's right. I'm bringing Aralani in just for you,
Thrawn.
Since that time, the two of them had worked together on a number of missions. So was it, in fact, Thrawn's tactical genius that Aralani had learned from, or was it the other way around? Could Thrawn have simply adopted Aralani's methods and run with them? In that case, maybe he got all the attention because he was brash enough to go full bore into situations where Aralani's innate prudence suggested a slower approach. So I got to know, because I had to come up with something to ask y'all about regarding Aralani. Whose playbook are we working out of? Is it Thrawn's or Aralani's? And in other words, between Thrawn and Aralani, who's the master and who's the apprentice?
Yes.
Okay.
This one definitely made me think. I was like, wow, that's interesting, because Aralani has been in her like military position longer than Thrawn, right? So she's known tactics and whatnot.
Senior.
Right.
Yeah.
So
in rank.
And so she probably lays out the plans for people so they know what they're to be doing throughout the battle. And then, if Thrawn just like, okay, give it a timeline, like it's going to take us a week to get this done. He's like, nope, I'm going to push forward and get it done in 4 days. And then he gets the recognition for it, right? So he's the one that gets but ultimately, I think just from the first book, from Chaos Rising, and I guess from the first canon Thrawn book, like you see that Thrawn is different from the other Chiss just by the way he thinks. So it's interesting to think that he would expedite Aralani's plans to get the recognition, but I do think it's Thrawn as the one that's the master behind it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tend to think maybe they're kind of working out of Aralani's playbook, but Thrawn sort of puts a creative spin on some of her plays, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And because to me, I think that Aralani has been a leader for a while, and they work together on so many missions that to use a Thrawn word, perhaps he's just learned all of that military stuff from her, but uses his sort of like creativity with the, looking at art and things like that, to sort of make things faster and more efficient, perhaps.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that. Like Arlani's the head coach and Thrawn's like the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He's like, but I also think that quote specifically reminds me of a little bit of what we kind of had mentioned a little bit in Thrawn before with the Chiss culture. Is kind of an inherent workplace sexism too, of like she comes up with all the ideas, but she waits a little bit and has some patience, and he's like, let's do it. And everyone's like, oh, Thrawn, that was rad. And she's like, what the hell? Like, I think that's a very deft kind of look at how, especially militarily, in other ways, like men and women are perceived differently. Of like, if you have patience and if you actually do all the things out and do all the work, then you may not get the attention. But if you're brash and you take the initiative and do the thing that might not work and go a little crazy, that is kind of a more masculine, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you kind of go off a little too quickly, but then people are way more easily to reward you. So I think Zahn is like tapping into something a little real there. So I think at the core, to answer your question, Charles, it is both of them, but from the outside, because of the way Thrawn implements things, I think that to the general Chiss as a whole, he gets a lot more recognition there. Also, I ship them forever. I love them. They need to go on more dates unless they're evil, or I will riot.
All right, more dates coming in unless they're evil. Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
Confirmed. You heard it here first. It's on. We got this covered in Screen Rant, so it must be true.
Yeah. Well, let's move on here to Nyx. Just really quickly on page 175, I wanted to talk about this. This is the rarest known metal in the chaos, which was a vital component of the alloy used to create the incredible toughness of a warship's hull. And so this was the tantalizing thing that Haplif and the Agbui and Jixtis were using to try to incite a Chiss civil war. And I'm curious, do y'all think that Nyx is going to be important moving forward in any way, or was it just the MacGuffin for this novel?
MacGuffin.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Eric. I think it's a MacGuffin. I think we're sort of led to believe that it's going to be this huge important thing for the next book, but I think it's going to be something that we don't see coming.
Yeah. I haven't heard of anything like Nyx, either say like in the Empire era, or is they just use regular metal, right? They don't have a name for it, do they?
Yeah, Durasteel and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. I like it being a chaos MacGuffin too. I don't mind it. I think it works out fine. Like they gotta make it makes sense that part of the universe would have different metals. So
Sure. Okay,
MacGuffin
all the way. I agree with you. And it leaves us more time if we move on quickly to talk about, again, the return of the Grisks. I have to bring this back in the overarching questions because...
It's going to make me leave this chair again, I swear again.
I know. I wanted to bring this question up, okay? Tell me this. Is there any chance that Jixtis is not a Grisk? Which I know sounds like a crazy question after everything that we've talked about, but I think Haplif does bring up a decently good point that obviously Thrawn planted. Is the term Grisk only a species? We know it is a species, but we also know, that the Grisks take control of other species and convince them to do their bidding, and then they refer to those people as their clients, quote unquote. So when Jix is using terms like we and us, is he referring to the Grisk species, or might he be referring to a force of some sort? And the reason I bring it up is why the hood and veil and gloves and all that? Why would it matter if he was seen if no one knows what a Grisk is anyways?
Okay,
The
I just
drama.
had this thought.
The drama? Okay.
I just had a really weird thought.
Do it.
If he is referring, like when he's referring to us and we and all of that as peoples that he's conquered, and maybe he isn't a Grisk, what if it's like Thurfian, like for real, with the hood and the veil? And we know he's sketchy, right?
He does.
I'm just saying.
Listen, in the audiobook, they both have very deep voice. Well, Thurfian his voice is a little higher, but Jix's voice is super low. But they're both low voices. So
Eric's less convinced.
Yeah, while this is a fun thought experiment, if he's not a true Grisk, that's just bad writing and stupid. I don't know. I'm trying to make it nice. I mean, it's just only because like Zahn has built that up so much and had a great reveal of it. I think that the hood is almost more for our benefit as readers of like the mystery, because it's still a book, right? It's still like the mystery of it.
Yeah.
But if it was more of like metaphorically a thing for a species that I guarantee you not a single other writer will ever use in anything, because they don't care.
Someone cut that clip for 10 years in the future when Grisks are brought back.
When the High Republic is full of Nile and Grisks. Yeah, I think that he has to be an authentic one, or else all the dramatic tension of this book's end and the beginning of the next one kind of evaporates. And I feel like that would just harm the momentum of the trilogy, and it would make the third book have to do a lot more work.
Yeah.
Because then the third book would have to introduce actually who he was, why he hid himself, why he went back and forth, and then the backstory memories would have to be messed up, and that would have to it would make an already complex world needlessly confusing, I think.
I like where your head's at, Emma. I like your plot twist.
No, yeah.
It's awesome.
If it has to be something that's fun, there will be 6s in my score for the next one and not where you think.
I mean, I could see your point, Eric, though. Like, if it's going to make the story even more complicated than a Thrawn story already is, I don't think I would want it. But,
Yeah.
if it's going to happen, I'm not going to complain,
Yeah, but Zahn loves his Grisk. It is his Kel's
Right.
orange soda. He loves Grisk. So I think
he wears the cloak because he doesn't want to be noticed by anybody else, right? So he can't be pointed out by what's his phrase from New Wandalon? Keylori.
Keylori.
He doesn't want to be brought down by Keylori of all people, so he has to wear this.
Right. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly, he totally wears that cloak just so people don't know he's a Grisk.
yeah.
But I think I thought for so long that Jixtus was a Chiss, and now I'm like, he's not a Chiss, but there's still a possibility he's not a Grisk. So
Yeah.
Anything is possible.
right.
Well, I'm still trying to get past Eric's Keenan and Kel reference. This feels like we are on a episode of Legends Look Back with these 90s references. But all right, let's talk about Jixtus. A couple more things here. He has a quote on page 404 where he says, "My more immediate concern is the fact that you left Hapleaf's body behind for the Chiss to examine." And he's saying this to Keylori. So why is that a problem? Why is Jixtus upset that the Chiss are able to study an Agbui body?
Ooh, interesting.
It's a really good question. I didn't think of that. Like, honestly, this quote just really passed over my head when I read it.
I mean, it's not like it's a Grisk and then they figure out
Right.
who the invading species is, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if we have an answer to it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
If the Chiss. I mean, they say that, or they sound like they have never met an Agbui before.
Ooh.
Go
I
ahead,
got an idea. So the Agbui, they touch people and they like get their vibes and stuff, right? What if they like save that as like a hard drive, and he has seen Jixtus and he has known Jixtus and things. So maybe secrets are like hidden within the biochemistry of the Agbui after they die, and you can like extract that
With a probe? Where does the probe
yeah,
go?
sure. I don't know. You take one of those like Echo, the thing Echo has
one
in
of his
hand, you
face
just go,
folds.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know. Echo just sticks his little like screwdriver and goes, and then you have information. Like it's Star Wars. That's how it works, right? You just gotta go like,
Just like the clip that I sent out today. Righty tighty, lefty loosey, turny onny.
One of my proudest moments.
Man, it's so good. It's a t-shirt. Go ahead.
Oh man. All right, so we don't necessarily know what the problem was with them leaving behind Hapleaf's body, But we do know earlier in the book, very early on page 21, Haplift says to Jixtus, so once we've destroyed the Chiss for you, then we go home. And Jixtus responds, then you go home. And so it's interesting because we know the Grisks don't just disappear. I looked this up on the timeline on Youtini.com. And this story, this book takes place in about 19 BBY. But we know that Grisks are around as late as about 1 BBY during the events of Thrawn treason. And, the latest thing that we know in the timeline, spoiler alert for Thrawn treason, I'm sorry, Wes, is that they were getting close to discovering one of the supply lines for the Death Star, right? That was one of the plot points from treason. I don't know. I mean, where is this going? We know Grisks aren't involved super long term, or we don't think they are. I mean, my question is, why are we still trying to make Grisks happen? Just like the meme that I sent to Eric after finishing this book.
They're a big bad that's not the Sith, and they're not the Empire. I think that's what Zahn is like. It wouldn't make sense for a big bad we know to be in the chaos, right? Because then they would have whatever. There's reasoning. So I think it's just trying to make a big bad worthy of a character like Thrawn. And it's not probably all going to be tied up in a bow to make sense as to why were the Eternals not in Avengers? Well, because the movie wasn't out yet. I think it might be one of those. But
a formidable opponent. He has to have one.
Yeah.
You can't just have some, Joe Schmo off the street. There's nobody in Star Wars named Joe Schmo, I hope, but a formidable opponent would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the idea there's always something out there that could encroach on the galaxy is a fun writer's conceit just to leave hanging. That Zahn's like, all right, here you go. I don't think anyone will use it, but there's an outer galactic bad race of people that are super smart that exist.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's move on from that. And the last overarching question I have for you has to do with nothing less than Starflash. Guys, what was the last part of this book where we get the senior aide or whoever for Thurfian, who's now the patriarch of the Myth family? He says, I'm going to tell you about this terrible alien weapon called Starflash. And I got to tell you guys, I laughed when I read that line. I did. It felt very cheesy to me. I want to know what Starflash is, but I was just like, ooh, Starflash. What is that? What were your thoughts on that line, and what do you think we might see? This is pure conjecture, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I read that as Starforge the first time, and I was like, "What? Are we going back to KOTOR? What's happening?"
Oh my God.
I mean, it makes sense. They're both weapons, right? But
Right.
Starflash, I feel like that's gonna be a super literal name. So I kind of wonder if maybe it's some sort of a weapon that, and again, like Charles said, this is just pure conjecture. I wonder if it's a weapon that explodes a star,
Yeah.
It's kind of like a mini Death Star. But of course, because we're in the chaos and we're sort of more isolated here, word wouldn't get out to the regular part of the quote unquote regular part of the galaxy, because obviously we had never seen anything like the Death Star before. Maybe this is like a cousin of the Death Star that we had never heard of before because of the isolation of the chaos.
Yeah.
Or they could turn back around Force Awakens style and suck the energy out of a star.
Yeah.
And then use that to project onto other worlds. But then,
interesting.
Starflash sounds like. I mean, it sounds like a wrestling persona to me. But I'm
I could see it.
Nerd.
As someone who, as I've said on this show multiple times, I have not read a lot of Legends, and I don't really go back and do my backlog as much as I should. This was the most Legends thing I could have ever thought of, and I actually really liked it. I was like, oh, I got a little tickled. I'm like, oh, fun, because we don't get Legends was filled with this super weapon, and then this giant super weapon, and then this super weapon, as Corey says in the chat. It's always a super weapon. But honestly, it's been a while since we've had just a giant freaking super weapon. And I think it's kind of a fun classic twist of all right, the Myth family knows the secrets of this giant, devastating super weapon. And that's kind of fun. And it is very Zahn. He is an old man writing Star Wars for 30 years. And you know what?
Yeah.
If he wants to do a big giant super weapon to round out his like 18th trilogy, I'm gonna let him get a big giant stupid super weapon. But in a really cool, fun way. So I think it's gonna be pretty straightforward as far as being just a big weapon that they gotta find. And I think that's gonna be fun because I don't think Thrawn deals with that a lot. It's a lot of logic and puzzles, but like Thrawn, you can't outthink just this giant laser that kills stars, so that could be kind of fun. I dug it. It was very classic.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree. If Zahn can get away with whatever he wants, if he can get away with having that same picture of him in a black turtleneck in the back of all of his books, he can get away with Starflash.
What a
If
hero.
you can
What a
rock the
legend.
glamour shots pose in the back of your books every time, then you're
Same
all for
one.
it.
Yes.
Same one.
Yes. All right, yo. Well, we got to move on. Let's run through some Easter eggs, some connective
time.
tissue, some random thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll be quick. So on page 80, a Whisker Cub is mentioned, and this is a creature that was first mentioned in Chaos Rising by Samacro, who was calling the Liaoan regime a Whisker Cub compared to the mighty Chiss Ascendancy, which he compared to a night hunter. So it's some sort of animal that everyone knows about in the Chaos. We've never seen one physically, but we've had it mentioned now in both books, so maybe we'll see one eventually.
Great.
On page 140, we get the quote from Thrawn: "The odds are never impossible, merely unfavorable." In other words, never tell him the odds. Great line. On page 170, again, we get the reference to the artificial gravity well generator that Thrawn took from the Vigari that, quote, "can pull a ship out of hyperspace as if it had run close to a stellar or planetary mass." And so that's the same technology the Vigari were known to use in Legends, like I brought up earlier, not to be confused with their tactic of placing innocent civilians trapped in transparasteel on the outside of their ships to discourage their enemies from firing on them. Because that's just terrible. Yikes.
Yikes.
Yes.
What book is
That's a
that
real
from?
I think that's also an Outbound Flight.
Okay.
But
I gotta read
talk
that
to our-
book.
Yeah, go talk to our Legends Look Back friends about that. On page 194, after Lackchip calls Lackfro by his full name, his full Chiss name, we get this quote: "Lackfro stared at her, feeling like he'd been punched in the stomach. No one on Selwys used anyone's full name after they'd first been introduced, not unless the circumstances were official, legal, or extraordinary." And so the Chiss are kind of like Earth Mothers, right? If they use your full name, you are in trouble. You are in some bantha poodoo.
Or dinner's ready, which
Or dinner's ready. Oh my God. Okay. In Memories 5, Haplif is talking about Jixtus's navigators, and he says he didn't know what part of the chaos these so-called attendants, capital A, came from. He'd never seen anyone like them except the pair in Jixtus's personal service, but they were clearly from someplace far away. Their purple robes and eerie eye lenses were as unsettling as their perpetual silence. And so that is a really fun callback. The attendants are basically alien navigators that operated out of the unknown regions. And we've seen them on screen actually once before in The Last Jedi in the background of Snoke's throne room, right?
What?
They're the
That's
people
so
in the back
cool.
right
Wow.
corner in Snoke's throne room who help him navigate his ship. And so there are
amazing.
ties then back to Snoke and back to Palpatine and all of that stuff.
that
That's
is
so
awesome.
cool.
awesome.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this is the second time that we have seen them in canon outside of The Last Jedi, with the first being a reference to them back in Thrawn Treason. So Zahn is on this whole attendance train. I think that's pretty cool.
Sweet. Perfect attendance.
Yeah. On page 226, Lackfro speaking to his cousin, and he says, "If I ship it standard parcel, the schedule says it should reach Naparar in 6 to 8 days. Or you could send it express. Have you checked those rates lately?" Point. Lackpup conceded. So first of all, what the hell are we talking about? And second of all, it sounds like USPS
Yeah.
in space is just as bad
Yes.
as on Earth.
They
They may have light speed, but we have Amazon Prime.
It sounds like the
Oh my
Postal
God.
Service screwed Zahn in some way, and he had to shoehorn it in there
Yep.
some way.
Yes.
That would be
He
so
had some
great.
packages
Hey.
lost in quarantine, I think.
Yeah. He was writing that package. He's like, well, I'll show them.
All right, on page 238, Wu Tru says, "I'll be damned, Admiral, it's a moon." And that's the antithesis of Obi-Wan's famous "that's no moon" line in A New Hope.
Obi-Wan's in every book.
Yes. I had to bring it back to him somehow.
Yeah, baby.
On page 254, Aralani and the unknown alien captain are talking, and Aralani says, "Interesting preliminaries. So, now that I know how to destroy you, shall we return to our respective people and deliver our reports?" "Your statement lacks accuracy," the alien commander said scornfully, "for it is I who knows how to destroy you." and it felt like the battle of wits from Princess Bride to me with Mazzini, when he's like, "A clever man would put the poison into his own goblet because he would know only a great fool would reach for what he's given." Like blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. It was so cheesy, but at the same time, so Legends Zahn. It's just fun.
Bless him.
On page 275, we get this quote: "There are aliens particularly suited to underground mining, for instance, short and stocky with lower oxygen requirements and the ability to see in low light settings." So Ugnaughts, perhaps?
Yeah, that's
Is that
how
what
I
we're talking about?
pictured.
Yeah. I like that.
Page 277, we get this quote: "The loose skin on Haplif's face piled itself into a bunch." And that's not a reference. That's just really gross. And I suffered through it once and wanted to make everyone suffer through it again.
The worst.
Yeah,
The
that's
worst.
pretty horrible.
Yeah.
Page 309, Thrawn says, "Come now, Captain. Everyone in the near reaches of the chaos has legends of the Chiss." So that may be a small wink from Zahn regarding all the Legends material regarding the Chiss that he's pulling in, or it's just a really awesome line that might be up for a Youtini award this year. We'll see.
Yeah. I am firmly of the opinion that no author or TV writer uses the word legends without knowing that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Ah,
I agree.
Yeah. Every time.
it's never a mistake, or it's never an accident.
Yeah, it's too
Yeah.
specific.
Now, on page 361, Thrawn and Lakinda are talking, and Thrawn says, "I agree. A coordinated operation, exquisitely planned and timed. Never mind the artistic beauty of it all," Lakinda snarled. "We need to send a warning to Scylla right away." And so leave it to Thrawn to note that something was so artistically done, right?
Oh.
Yeah, another
Nice,
callback
yeah.
to Legends. Now, finally, on page 400, we get this quote: "A paradox atop a riddle, atop a mystery." And I'm choosing to believe that was Zahn breaking the fourth wall and conceding that these books are just incredibly convoluted. That's what I think about all of his novels.
I like that.
They're a
He's
paradox
like, I
atop
know,
a riddle,
I
atop
know.
a mystery.
That's great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
So that's all that I have for this book. Not a ton of Easter eggs, because a lot of this, again, is new. This is Zahn in his own sandbox, even though he is pulling in a lot of that Legends material that he's created before. So, that's it. That's all I have. Let's go back around, give it a 1 to 10 rating. Tell me any final thoughts you have, why your rating changed, if it changed, and then we'll take it home. So, Emma, I think you started us off the first time around. Let's hear how you would rate the book now.
All right. So I think the first time I gave it an 8.4. I could be totally wrong though. It feels like it's been a year ago.
Yeah.
But I'm going to up that to an 8.8. I think talking about books and comics on roundtables always make me increase my opinion of them. It never fails to be the case. And I just really appreciate the characters specifically after talking about it, talking about the Chiss politics and machinations, and also really appreciating the villains. I don't think I appreciated them enough the first time around, and now that we've talked about them, I think it's really brought to light some really cool things, and kind of makes me want to read it again and read the other canon Thrawn trilogy again as well. So really good stuff. Zahn never fails to disappoint. I really enjoyed it. So 8.8 from me.
All right. Wes, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I've done one of these where I haven't increased my score after having the roundtable, like you said, Emma. I think I was at an 8.6 or an 8.7. I'm gonna bump it to an 8.9. Again, because we got the groundwork from Chaos Rising, this book was way more enjoyable to me. It does make me want to go back and listen to Chaos Rising again, so I can get a better foundation of everything that happened in that book. Not just the political aspects, but also like the battles and Yiv the benevolent. But the trying to break the Chiss Ascendancy from within is one of the plot points that I really loved, that I enjoyed reading and listening to. So 8.9. I'm gonna bump it up from my original score.
Okay. 2 good scores. Eric, what do you got?
All right. I think if I remember correctly, I did an 8.75, I think.
That sounds familiar.
Off you. So I think I'll join the crowd. I'll do an 8.85. So I'll be right in the middle of the two. Yeah, I think this was a great book. Talking about it again made me really enjoy how much Zahn built. And as we talk about it more, it really, really makes me excited for Lesser Evil. I think that with these books, I always, I start it and it takes me about 2.5 weeks to read the first third. And then I get into it and then I fly. And
That's
I think
so true.
based on how Lesser Evil is being built up by the end of this book, with Jixtus finally being revealed, with the Civil War almost happening, with the Star Flag, we have so much momentum now. And this conversation reminds me of that I'm so excited about having that come out. So 8.85, I'll give us our exact average of these. Charles, what about you?
Yeah, so I know I lowballed this book the first time around. I think I gave it a 6.9.
Yes,
which
you did.
Is my lowest score I've ever given anything. Now, I agree with y'all. I'm always going to raise my score, but not much. I'm going to raise this to a 7.0. I know I'm rating it a lot lower than y'all, and it's not that there are not very enjoyable parts of this trilogy. Again, I really liked the Lacfro stuff. I really enjoyed Haplif as a villain. My biggest issue is that a lot happened in this book, and I feel like very few plot points are actually being carried into Lesser Evil.
Sure.
And so it felt like a lot of convoluted, let me try to figure this out, think through this, with a lot of payoff that's going to come in another book. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm coming at it from. Still love Thrawn. Still will read anything that Timothy Zahn puts out in a heartbeat. But that's kind of where I fall. I think Lesser Evil is going to be amazing, though. I think I might be rating that a lot higher. But with all that said, y'all, that's going to wrap up another roundtable, another one for the books. So Eric, take us home, good buddy.
Yeah. So again, I know we say this, we try to say this on every roundtable. Oh, giant round of applause to Charles for coming up with all these just by yourself, dude. It's incredible work. It's great conversation. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope that this makes you want to go back and reread stuff or get you excited for Lesser Evil. As a reminder, looking ahead on the Living Force, our next roundtable will be The Rising Storm, which isn't even out yet. So you got a while, which means that we got so Charles, we got a bit, buddy.
Thank goodness.
So the next one, that does come out in 2 weeks from tomorrow, I believe. So make sure you get your pre-orders in on that. And coming up, we're going to have a lot more kind of like, I say fun episodes. That makes these sound like they're not fun, but less like regimented episodes of the Living Force. I believe on the calendar next week, we're going to have another draft night. So be sure to tune in for that. I won't say what it is just yet, mostly because I want to solidify it, but should be a great episode at our normal time. So if some of y'all skipped the episode, you're not listening to this now. So I don't know. Just know that we'll be happy to have you back. A quick thank you to Emma for coming on both parts of this roundtable, in addition to all the plethora of podcasts that you did in the past week. Your work is amazing. And again, remember to check Emma every Wednesday night on the Cosmic Force. Emma, can you tell the good people what they're going to see you guys do this Wednesday?
Yes, so this Wednesday we are going to be talking about the High Republic in comics. There was a great segment in the High Republic show that came out recently, kind of an interview with Ario Anandito and some of the other people on the comics team. So we're going to be discussing that. We're also going to be talking about some of our favorite High Republic comics art, and it's going to be a great time. So definitely join us. And really quickly, before I toss it back to you, Eric, thank you guys for having me on. This was really enjoyable for me, and I always love hanging out with you guys. So thanks for having me.
You're very
MVP.
welcome.
MVP.
Yeah, you did
All right.
Oh,
great.
thank you.
Yeah, for real. That you've done the horrible thing at Youtini. You've proven that you're very good at something, so now you have to do it all the time.
Yeah, you came on and your video and audio worked perfectly. So you're
Yes.
welcome
That's
back
it.
anytime.
Here we go. That's all that counts, right?
Awesome. Well, thank you to Emma. Thank you, Charles. And Wes, you did a damn good job too. Look at you.
Yeah,
Hey, look at us.
me go. Look at me
We
go.
did it.
We're growing.
All right, folks. Have a great rest of your week, because that, my friends, will do it for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you already support us on Patreon, thank you for that. We hope you're enjoying everything on there. Get ready for our Patreon event later this month. And a special thank you goes out to Cheryl Bell, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sender on our Jedi High Council, and Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at Eric Eilerson. Charles is at C. Henkel. Wes is at Boss West. Emma is at Irma Jedi 26. And Corey, on night shift, is at Doc Star Wars MD. A special thank you to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Ryan, our graphic designer extraordinaire, and Wes, our producer and community manager. Thank you to Charles, Wes, and Emma for podcasting with me tonight. Thank you to all of you in the chat for hanging out. And as always, may the Force be with you. Face flaps. Yeah.